Welcome back to the deep dive. I want to start today's session by tapping into a feeling that I think pretty much everyone listening has felt recently. You open your news feed or you walk into a Monday morning strategy meeting, and the topic on the table is artificial intelligence.
Always.
And the overwhelming sensation isn't just excitement, it's vertigo.
Vertigo is the perfect word for it. It's that feeling of the ground just shifting underneath you while you're trying to stand still.
Exactly. Feels like the Wild West out there. We've got the gold rush,
The snake oil salesman.
the outlaws. And usually on this show, we are looking at the shiny new technology itself. We're usually the ones talking about the new saloon in town.
Right.
But today, we're doing something a little different. We are going to look for the sheriff.
Or at the very least, the sheriff's operating manual.
Right. We are doing a forensic analysis of a document that, frankly, sounds incredibly dry on paper, but might just be the most important safety net we have in this entire industry.
Yeah, the title alone is something else.
We are looking at BSEN ISOIEC 23894.2024.
And don't let the alphanumeric soup scare you off. If you are running a business or you're part of an organization that is even thinking about touching AI,
Which is everyone.
which is everyone, exactly.
Yeah.
This document is essentially your survival guide. It's the instruction manual for keeping AI safe, effective, and, well, actually trustworthy.
So set the stage for us. We know ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, they're the ones who decide what size a shipping container is or how to manage food safety.
The basics of global commerce, yeah.
But where did this specific document come from? Because AI feels like it moves way too fast for a committee to keep up.
That's a totally valid skepticism. And you're right, usually standards lag years behind the tech, but this one has a very serious pedigree.
Okay.
It is a European standard, that's the EN part, and it's adopted directly from the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, and the International Electrotechnical Commission, the IEC.
So the big guns.
The biggest. And specifically, it was prepared by the technical committees that focus purely on information technology and artificial intelligence. So these are the people in the weeds.
And the fact that it's a European standard, that matters, right? This isn't just some think tank's suggestion box.
It matters immensely. It gives the document the status of a national standard in countries like Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, the UK. I mean, the list goes on.
Wow.
So if you are doing business in Europe or if you are interacting with those markets, this document isn't just a nice to have, it is the benchmark. It's the language of trust.
So the mission today is to treat this like a masterclass.
I like that.
You and I are the instructors. The listener is the student, perhaps an executive or a lead engineer, and we are going to meticulously unpack the first 4 sections or clauses of this document.
And we can't skip the boring stuff?
No, we are not skipping the boring stuff because, as I was reading through this, I realized the boring stuff is where all the secrets are hidden.
I could not agree more. You cannot possibly understand how to manage the risk of a new machine learning model, which is, what's in Clause 4, if you don't understand the foundational scope and definitions that Clause 1 lays out first.
Okay, let's crack open the book then. Section 1. Clause 1, scope.
The scope.
Now, I usually look at the scope section of these technical documents, and I think, okay, who is this actually for? Is this just for the Googles and the Microsofts of the world? The people building the giant robots?
That is the most common misconception, and honestly, it's the most dangerous one. If you look at the text, it is extremely specific about the audience.
Okay.
It says this guidance is for organizations that develop, produce, deploy, or use products, systems, and services that utilize AI.
Or use. That's the trapdoor, isn't it?
It is the massive net that catches almost everyone. There is this belief that AI risk management is for, OpenAI or Google DeepMind or NVIDIA, the people building the brains.
Right, the creators.
But this standard explicitly, deliberately targets the user.
So let's make this practical. If I am, say, a hospital administrator, and I buy a diagnostic tool from a vendor to help spot tumors on x-rays, I didn't code it, I didn't train it, I just installed it. Does this standard apply to me?
Absolutely, 100%. Because you are the user, and under ISO 23894, the user bears a massive amount of responsibility for risk management.
Why, though? Isn't the vendor responsible for making a safe product?
They are, but think about it. If that hospital diagnostic tool hallucinates a cancer diagnosis, or worse, misses one,
Oh, wow.
the patient isn't going to look up the source code of the vendor in Silicon Valley. They're going to sue the hospital, the point of contact.
So being a user doesn't absolve you of the risk?
In many ways, it complicates it, because as a user, you often have less visibility into how the tool works than the developer does. But the scope makes it crystal clear. Regardless of your organization's size or sector, if AI touches your workflow, you need a risk management process.
Okay, so that's a huge takeaway right from the first page. The other thing the scope emphasizes is integration. It says the goal is to assist organizations to integrate risk management into their AI-related activities. Why that word? Why integrate?
This is the anti-silo clause.
The anti-silo clause, I like that.
The temptation in any big corporate structure is to create a department of AI. You hire a chief AI officer, you give them a corner office, a fancy title, and you say, okay, you handle the robot stuff, the rest of us will do business as usual.
Right. Keep the sci-fi stuff over there, don't let it infect the rest of the business.
And ISO says, no, that fails every time. AI risk management has to be woven into your existing financial risk, your legal risk, your reputational risk. It's all the same fabric.
Give me an example of that.
If your AI chatbot starts spewing offensive content, that's not an IT problem.
No, definitely not.
It's a PR crisis, it's a legal liability, and it's a revenue hit. It's all connected. It has to be integrated.
And this brings up a structural concept in the document that I found really interesting. It's described as a mirror standard. It's essentially a plug-in for ISO 31000.2018.
Ah, yes. This is crucial context. If you don't get this, the rest of the document doesn't make sense.
So what's ISO 31000?
ISO 31000 is the grandfather standard. It's the generic guidelines for risk management that have been around for years. If you go to a Fortune 500 company, their chief risk officer already knows ISO 31000 by heart. It's the Bible of risk.
So this new document, 23894, it doesn't rewrite the Bible.
No, it's an expansion pack.
Expansion pack, okay.
It mirrors the clause structure of 31000 perfectly. It says, okay, you know how you manage risk, usually keep doing that, but here are the specific new monsters you're going to face in the AI dungeon.
I love that analogy. It's the AI expansion pack. New maps, new enemies, same game mechanics.
Precisely. And just as importantly, the text states that this guidance can be customized to any organization and its context. It's not a rigid set of handcuffs, it's a flexible framework. You don't need to adopt every single line if it doesn't fit your particular context.
So you adapt it to your own company's size and mission.
You have to.
Okay, so that's the scope. It's for everyone touching AI, it integrates with what you're already doing, and is built on top of the established ISO 31000.
That's the foundation.
Now we move to Section 2. Clause 2, normative references.
The required reading list.
Exactly. And usually, I'll be honest, I skim this part. It just looks like a bibliography at the end of a textbook. But you're telling me this is actually important.
It is indispensable. The text literally uses that word, indispensable, for the application of this document. You cannot fully utilize 23894 without referencing these.
Okay, so you've convinced me. What's on the list?
3 key documents. First, obviously, ISO 31000.2018, the parent standard we just discussed. That's the game engine.
Right.
Second is ISO Guide 73.2009.
Guide 73, what's that?
It's the vocabulary guide. It defines what we mean when we say risk management, stakeholder, consequence. It's the dictionary.
Why do we need a separate book just for vocabulary? Can't we just use, English?
Because words matter, especially in risk. If I say the word risk to a software engineer, they think code failing to compile.
Okay. Yeah.
If I say risk to a lawyer, they think lawsuit. If I say risk to a venture capitalist, they think opportunity.
3 completely different things.
And if they're all sitting in a room trying to manage risk, they're not even having the same conversation. Guide 73 forces everyone to agree on what the words mean before they start arguing. It's a Rosetta Stone for risk.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So we have the main framework in the dictionary. What's the third one?
The third one is arguably the most critical for our discussion. ISOIEC 2.9.2022.
That's a mouthful.
It is, but the title tells you everything. Information technology, artificial intelligence concepts, and terminology.
Ah, okay. So that's the one that defines what AI actually is.
Exactly. And think about why that matters so much right now. Is a complex Excel spreadsheet with a bunch of IF statements AI? Is a simple linear regression model AI?
I've seen some Excel sheets that feel sentient, honestly.
We all have. But for legal and standards purposes, we need a hard line. We need to know what we're talking about. ISOIEC 22989 provides that line.
And that stops the marketing department from just slapping an AI label on everything.
It's meant to. It ensures that when a vendor sells you an AI solution and you sign a contract for it, you both agree on what that term implies. It prevents marketing buzzwords from infiltrating your actual risk assessment.
So this section establishes that AI risk management isn't reinventing the wheel.
Not at all.
It's building on established definitions of risk and AI, which leads us perfectly into Section 3, Clause 3 terms and definitions.
Where we define our reality.
The document is very efficient here. It primarily refers the reader back to the documents we just talked about, ISO 31000 and ISOIEC 22989, and it points to the ISO online browsing platform.
It doesn't want to repeat itself.
But there's one definition I want to pause on, because I think it sets up everything else we're going to talk about today. And it comes from ISO 31000. It's the definition of risk.
Yes. This is fundamental. In the ISO world, risk has a very specific meaning. It is defined as the effect of uncertainty on objectives.
Effect of uncertainty on objectives. That sounds surprisingly philosophical, almost vague.
It sounds vague, but it's actually incredibly precise.
Yeah.
And it's profound. Most people think of risk as something bad happening, a crash, a hack, a loss.
Downside.
Purely downside. But in ISO terms, risk is just the uncertainty. The effect could be negative, yes, but it could also be positive.
A positive risk. That sounds like a contradiction. Give me an example in the AI world.
Okay, easy. Imagine you deploy an AI to optimize your logistics and supply chain network. Your objective is to cut costs by 5%. That's the goal.
Okay, very clear objective.
After a month, the AI finds a route optimization that cuts your costs by 20%.
That sounds like a win, a huge win. Why is that a risk?
Because it is a deviation from the expected. It is an effect of uncertainty. Why did it save 20%?
I don't know. It found a better way.
Maybe. Did it find a legitimate efficiency? Or did it route all your trucks through a residential neighborhood that bans commercial vehicles, exposing you to massive fines you haven't received yet? Or did it achieve that speed by starving a different, more profitable department of essential inventory?
I see. The good surprise might be hiding a bad reality just around the corner.
Exactly. Or, even if it's purely good, it creates instability. If you suddenly save 20%, maybe you need to completely readjust your annual budget or your staffing plans. Management requires predictability. Anything that deviates from the plan, good or bad, is a risk that must be managed.
That is a fascinating shift in mindset. We aren't just hunting for disasters. We are mapping any uncertainty that impacts what we are trying to achieve.
Precisely. And that definition governs everything that comes next.
Okay, brace yourselves, listeners.
Yeah.
We have arrived at the main event, Section 4, Clause 4, Principles of AI Risk Management.
This is the meat of the document. If you turn off the deep dive after this section, you'll still be smarter than 90% of the market, I promise.
The source text sets this up with a really interesting mechanism. It uses a table 1 to compare the generic principles from good old ISO 31000 with their specific implications for AI.
It's like a before and after picture.
It is.
Or maybe base model versus sport mode. The left column is the principle we know from general business. The right column is, okay, but what does that mean when you add a neural network into the mix?
We have principles labeled A through H. We are going to walk through them one by one. Let's start with principle A, integrated.
The concept here, as we touched on earlier, is that risk management is an integral part of all organizational activities. It shouldn't be a side project.
And what does the AI-specific guidance say?
It says, no specific guidance beyond ISO 31000.2018.
Laughs. Okay, well, that was a bit anticlimactic, so next.
Hold on. Don't dismiss it so quickly. The fact that there is no specific guidance is actually the point. It's a statement. It reinforces that AI is not a special snowflake that gets to live by different rules from the rest of the business. You don't create a separate department of AI risk that never talks to the Department of Financial Risk. Integration is universal.
It's a business function, not a science experiment.
Exactly. Whether you are managing a risk of a new coffee machine or a generative AI chatbot, it must be part of the main business flow. The principle is the same.
Okay, I see. It's asserting that the standard rules of business still apply.
They have to.
Let's see if that holds true for principle B, structured and comprehensive. The concept is that a structured approach contributes to consistent and comparable results.
And the AI implication. Let me guess.
No specific guidance beyond ISO 31000.2018.
I'm sensing a pattern.
You and me both.
But again, it's the same logic. If you want comparable results, meaning if you want to be able to say this AI system is riskier than that legacy software, you need a standard ruler, a consistent yardstick.
You can't change the ruler just because the technology is new and shiny.
You can't. If you create a weird, specialized risk assessment format just for AI, you break the structured principle because you can no longer compare apples to apples across your organization.
Makes sense. Let's do the last one in this little group. Principle C, customized. The concept is that the framework and process are customized and proportionate to the organization's context.
And let me guess, no specific guidance.
You guessed it. Same thing.
So the first three principles, integrated, structured, and customized, are basically the document looking us in the eye and saying, business as usual, the foundation doesn't change.
Correct. But hold on your hat,
Yeah.
because we are about to hit Principle D, inclusive.
This is where the training wheels come off. This is where we take our first major deep dive into AI specifics. This is where the document stops being polite and starts getting real.
The general concept is that appropriate and timely involvement of stakeholders enables their knowledge and views to be considered.
Yeah.
Basic stuff. But the text here for AI, I mean, it explodes with detail.
It really does. The text explicitly states that because of the potentially far-reaching impacts of AI, it is critical to have a dialogue with diverse internal and external groups.
Far-reaching impacts.
Sure.
That's a polite way of saying AI can mess things up on a massive societal scale.
It absolutely is, and it brings up a crucial point right away. Organizations need to realize that using AI might introduce additional stakeholders they didn't even know they had before.
Can you give me an example of that? Who is a new stakeholder?
Well, think about a traditional software company. Their stakeholders are, their customers, their employees, maybe their shareholders, a pretty tight circle.
Right.
But if they deploy an AI that scrapes data from the public internet, say an image generator, suddenly every artist whose work was scraped to train that model is a stakeholder. They are data subjects. Every person whose face appears in a photo is a stakeholder.
Oh, wow. So the circle of people you have to worry about just got a lot bigger.
Exponentially bigger. The text mentions specifically that machine learning relies on data. So you need stakeholders who can help you identify risks regarding data collection, processing, and the source of that data. You aren't just managing the risk of the code, you're managing the risk of the ingredients you fed into the code.
The ingredients. I like that. So inclusivity is about checking your ingredients.
It is.
The text also talks about transparency and explainability here. It says different stakeholders need different types of information. This was fascinating.
This is such a nuanced and important point in the document. It actually uses the term stakeholder personas.
Personas, like in marketing where you have soccer mom Susan.
It's a similar idea, yeah. A regulator is one persona. They need different information than a business evaluator or, most importantly, a person directly affected by the AI.
Okay, break that down.
The regulator might need to see the compliance audit logs, the data lineage, the technical F1 scores, all the jargon. But if you hand those technical logs to a regular person who is just denied a loan by your AI,
that's useless to them. It's insulting, even.
It's worse than useless. If I'm denied a loan, I don't care about the F1 score. I want to know why.
In simple English.
In plain language. You are denied because your debt-to-income ratio is too high, the standard says. Your reporting mechanisms must be tailored to these specific personas. If you just publish one generic 50-page transparency report full of code snippets and think you're done, you are failing the inclusive principle.
That is a heavy lift for an organization. It requires a lot of translation, a lot of thought.
It does, and it goes even further. The text mentions bias and human oversight. It says stakeholders can help identify what constitutes bias in the working of the AI system.
That's interesting, because bias is so subjective, right? Or at least defining it can be. One person's feature is another person's bug.
Exactly. An engineer sitting in a quiet office in Silicon Valley might not see the bias in their model. They test it on their sample data. It works for them and their friends. But if you include stakeholders from the community that the model is actually going to be used on, say, a minority community or a specific socioeconomic group, they might spot the bias instantly.
Because they're living it.
They're living it. They'll say, hey, that variable you're using for risk, which is zip code, that's just a proxy for race in our city.
So inclusive isn't just a feel-good buzzword here. It's a critical risk mitigation strategy.
It's a defense mechanism. It's a bug bounty program for bias. You include people so you don't get blindsided by a massive lawsuit or a PR disaster later.
So Principle D is a big one. It's not just talk to your team. It's talk to everyone who might possibly be affected by this thing, ever.
Pretty good summary, yeah.
Now let's move to Principle E, dynamic.
The moving target.
The concept is that risks emerge, change, or disappear. In traditional risk management, this usually means, hey, the market changed, or there's a new competitor, let's update our risk register. But with AI,
With AI, the system itself changes. The risk isn't just external, it's internal.
there is a line in the source text here that really stood out to me. It mentions that AI systems are inherently dynamic due to continuous learning, refining, and validating. And then it says some systems have the ability to adapt and optimize based on loops, creating, and I'm quoting here, dynamic changes on their own without human intervention.
That is the Terminator line, isn't it?
Laughs. Kind of is, it feels like that. But in a business context, that's genuinely terrifying.
It is the defining challenge of AI risk. If you buy a toaster, it stays a toaster. It toasts bread, that's it. If you deploy a learning AI model, it might be a toaster today and a microwave tomorrow, and you might not even know it changed.
Let's talk about those feedback loops. Can you give us a real-world scenario?
The classic example is predictive policing. You buy a sophisticated AI to tell you where crime is likely to happen in your city. The AI, trained on historical arrest data, says, send more police cars to neighborhood A.
Okay, so you do.
You do. You send more police to neighborhood A. Because the police are there, they spot more minor crimes, jaywalking, loitering, things they wouldn't have seen otherwise. They make more arrests. That new arrest data goes back into the AI.
And the AI says, see, I was right. There's tons of crime in neighborhood A. Send even more cars.
Exactly. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The system didn't predict reality, it created a new reality. That is a dynamic change on its own. And if you aren't auditing for that feedback loop constantly, you aren't managing risk, you're just automating bias at high speed.
So the standard implies that the traditional annual risk review is dead.
Dead and buried. You cannot audit an AI once a year and call it a day. The model you audited in January might be a completely different beast by July because of the data it has consumed and the feedback loops it's created. Risk management has to be continuous. It has to be as dynamic as the system itself.
It also mentions the legal landscape here. Quote, legal and regulatory requirements related to AI are frequently changing and being updated.
I mean, we see this in the news every single day. The EU AI Act, new executive orders, state-level privacy laws. So your risk is dynamic on two fronts. The technology itself is changing internally.
And laws governing it are changing externally. You're trying to hit a moving target while standing on a moving platform.
That's a perfect way to put it. And it's not just the law. Customer expectations are shifting too. The text notes that expectations regarding AI are high and shift as quickly as the systems themselves.
Right. What seems like magic 6 months ago is dumb AI today.
Exactly. That creates a huge reputational risk if you don't keep up, or if your system starts to feel dated.
So Principle E tells us, don't get comfortable. The ground is always, always shifting. Let's move to Principle F, best available information.
I call this one the data dilemma.
The concept is that inputs to risk management are based on historical and current information, taking into account limitations and uncertainties. Standard stuff.
Yeah.
But for AI, the text highlights a critical issue, the information gap.
Also known as information asymmetry. This goes right back to our discussion about the user versus the developer.
The document notes there's often an asymmetry of information between those developing the AI and those using it.
Right. Let's go back to the bank. You're a bank using an AI model from a third-party vendor to assess creditworthiness. Do you know how that model was trained?
No.
Do you know what data was used, the demographics, the time period?
Probably not. The vendor considers that intellectual property, a trade secret.
It's a black box. But you are the one using it, so you have a risk. This model might be discriminatory, but you have an information gap. I can't see the code or the data to check.
So what does the standard say you should do? Just throw your hands up.
No, it says users need to keep track of relevant information available regarding usage. And crucially, it says you have to document the limitations.
Document the limitations. What does that mean?
It means you have to explicitly write down in your risk register. We are using this tool, but we have a blind spot here because of Contract Clause X with our vendor. You cannot just ignore the blind spot. You have to capture it in the risk management process.
You have to document your own ignorance.
Essentially, yes. It's about turning your unknown unknowns into known unknowns. That's a huge step in risk management.
The text also mentions historical limitations. AI relies on data, and data is, by definition, history.
Data is a record of what has happened, but as we just discussed under the dynamic principle, the future of AI is constantly changing. The text warns that historical information can be limited and future expectations change quickly.
So just because the stock market behaved one way for the last 10 years.
That doesn't mean your AI, trained on that data, can predict the completely unprecedented crash in year 11 because the context, the whole world has changed. Past performance is not an indicator of future results.
Okay. Principle F is about acknowledging what you don't know. Now, Principle G, human and cultural factors.
A societal check. This one's big.
The concept is that human behavior and culture significantly influence risk management. This is where the standard gets very human-centric, very sociological.
It does, and this is a huge departure from older IT standards that just focused on server uptime and bugs and things like that.
The text mentions that organizations must monitor how AI systems interact with the human and cultural landscape.
Yeah.
And then drops this phrase that I can't stop thinking about. AI systems interact with pre-existing societal patterns.
That is such a profound statement. Pre-existing societal patterns. It means AI doesn't exist in a vacuum. It doesn't land on a blank slate. It lands in a world that already has a history, that already has inequality and existing cultural norms.
And the text explicitly lists what this can impact. Equitable outcomes, privacy, freedom of expression, fairness, safety, security, the environment, and human rights.
It's a checklist of modern anxieties, isn't it? But think about pre-existing patterns. If you train an AI on hiring data from the 1970s,
Oh boy.
the AI will learn the pattern that men get hired for executive roles far more than women. The AI isn't sexist in the human sense. It doesn't have feelings or intent. It is just accurately reflecting a sexist pre-existing pattern that exists in the data.
So the risk management challenge is to recognize that your machine is going to absorb and then amplify the culture it learns from, warts and all.
Exactly. It's not just about if the code works. It's about how the code fits into society. The standard calls out freedom of expression, too, which is huge.
Huge right now with content moderation AI on social media platforms.
Right. If your AI blocks certain posts because it misunderstands slang from a particular culture or can't detect satire, are you inadvertently violating human rights?
That's a risk,
Yeah.
a massive one.
It's a legal risk, a reputational risk, a societal risk. Principle G demands that you think about these things. You can't just throw up your hands and say, it's an engineering problem, it's a sociology problem.
This feels like a huge shift for tech. We aren't just talking about supply chains and component failures anymore. We are talking about human rights.
That is the nature of AI. It is a socio-technical technology. You cannot separate the tech from the people.
Which brings us to the final principle. Principle H, continual improvement.
The concept is simple: improvement through learning and experience.
And the AI implication here involves the unknowns.
Yes. The text says the identification of previously unknown risks related to AI should be considered in your improvement process.
This goes right back to the dynamic nature we talked about. New risks appear all the time.
And it mentions lifecycle learning. Organizations involved in design, development, or deployment must monitor the AI system's entire ecosystem for performance successes, shortcomings, and lessons learned. It isn't a launch and leave product, it's a living thing.
And there's a specific command here regarding research that I thought was great.
Yes, I love this part. It says organizations must maintain awareness of new AI research findings and techniques.
The standard basically says you have to keep doing your homework forever.
You do, because the field moves so unbelievably fast. A safe security method for protecting your model today might be proven completely vulnerable by a research paper published on ArcSafe tomorrow.
Like a new jailbreak method for a large language model that gets posted online.
Exactly. If you aren't reading the research, or if you don't have someone on your team whose job it is to stay current, you are exposed. You might be relying on a shield that no longer works and you don't even know it.
So continual improvement in AI isn't just about making the process more efficient. It's about survival. It's about staying one step ahead of obsolescence, or worse, a catastrophic vulnerability.
Absolutely. The feedback loop must be continuous, both inside your system and outside in the wider world.
Wow. Okay, let's take a breath. That was a lot.
We covered a lot of ground, but it's all connected.
Let's summarize what we've done here. We've walked through Clause 1. The scope finding out this is for everyone, especially the users, and it integrates with business as usual. Clause 2 and 3, the foundations connecting us to the broader ISO world, and crucially, redefining risk as uncertainty.
The effect of uncertainty, yeah.
And then Clause 4, the 8 principles.
And if you look at the arc of those principles, just the journey from A to H, it tells a story.
It really does. How do you see that story?
It starts with A, B, and C. Integration, structure, customization, that's the solid ground. The business as usual, that's the familiar part.
Right. Stick to the basics of good management.
Then it moves to de-inclusive. Okay, now open the doors, let the stakeholders in, admit you don't know everything.
Then E dynamic.
Yeah.
Brace for impact, because everything is moving and the system is changing on its own.
Then F, best available information. Now you have to grapple with the data gaps, the black boxes, the things you literally cannot see.
Then G, human and cultural factors.
Yeah.
The sobering realization that your code impacts human rights and society.
And finally, H, continual improvement. The commitment to never, ever stop learning, because the moment you stop, you are dangerous.
It's a journey from control to humility, almost. A shift in mindset from integrated, structured to inclusive, dynamic, human-centric.
That is the perfect summary. That's the ball game right there.
So here's the so what for our listeners. Why should they really care about BSEN ISOIEC 23894.2024?
Whether you are buying software or building it, Clause 4 is your checklist for sanity. If you are sitting in a meeting about a new AI tool and no one is talking about inclusivity regarding the data sources,
Big flag.
or no one has a plan for the dynamic changes that will happen 6 months from now,
Big red flag.
you aren't managing risk, you are gambling. And you're probably gambling with your company's future.
You're gambling. I like that. This standard stops you from gambling.
It gives you the odds, at least. It helps you be the house, not the player.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave the listeners with a provocative thought. We touched on Principle E, the dynamic nature of AI.
Yes, the system changing itself.
Right. And it raises a massive question. If an AI system can create dynamic changes on its own, based on feedback loops, moving faster than any human committee can possibly audit, are we moving toward a future where the risk management itself needs to be automated just to keep up?
Oh, that is a brain twister. An AI to manage the risk of another AI.
Exactly. Does that solve the problem? Or does that just introduce a new, higher layer of risk, a meta-risk, where we no longer understand the risk manager itself?
Turtles all the way down.
It's turtles all the way down.
Who audits the auditor AI? That's a question for another day, I think.
It certainly is. That is something to mull over. Listeners, thank you for joining us in the masterclass today. We only got through Clause 4, but remember, the document continues into Clause 5, the framework, and Clause 6, the process, which is all about applying these principles to concrete action. Maybe we'll tackle those in a future session.
I'd love to. There's a lot more to unpack there.
Until then, keep reading, keep learning, and keep asking these hard questions. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.